Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly toward the giant doors of the Galactic Council chamber. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. He was angry. Very angry. Behind him walked Dr. Lisa Harper, carrying a small device that held the proof of what the hegemony was doing to human colonies. The chamber was huge. So huge that Jake felt like a tiny bug walking into a cathedral. The ceiling went up so high he could not see the top. All around the circular room sat aliens from hundreds of different worlds. Some looked like giant insects. Others looked like living crystals. Some were just clouds of gas floating in glass containers. Jake had been to this place many times before. Each time he had asked for help. Each time he had been told to wait, to be patient, to follow the rules. But today was different. Today he had seen the videos from Kepler 44b. Today he had watched the last human settlement go silent. The speaker of the council was a creature called Elder Vexthera. She looked like a giant praying mantis but was the size of a car. Her kind had been part of the council for over 10,000 years. She spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Captain Morrison," she said, "we welcome you once again to these chambers. What brings humanity before the council today?" Jake stepped forward. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. "Elder Vexera, respected council. Members, I come before you with urgent news. The hegemony forces have destroyed the last human colony in the Kepler 442 system. Over 50,000 men, women, and children are dead." A sound like wind through leaves filled the chamber as different aliens made their various noises of discussion. Some clicked their claws. Others hummed. The gas clouds changed colors. Elder Vexthera raised one of her sharp arms for silence. "This is indeed troubling news, Captain Morrison. But as you well know, the Council cannot act without proper investigation and unanimous agreement." Dr. Harper stepped forward and activated her device. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the human colony of New Haven as it had been just 1 week ago. Children playing in the streets. Families working in the fields. People living normal, peaceful lives. Then the image changed. It showed the hegemony ships arriving. The aliens in the chamber watched as the insect-like hegemony soldiers landed and began rounding up humans. They watched as men and women were separated from their children. They watched as the humans were loaded into processing ships. "The hegemony is not just killing our people," Lisa said, her voice breaking slightly. "They are harvesting them, using human biological material to create weapons and soldiers for their war machine." The hologram showed the inside of a hegemony processing facility. Humans strapped to tables while machines extracted their organs, children being prepared for mental conditioning to turn them into slave soldiers. The images were too horrible to describe in detail. Many of the alien delegates looked away. Some made sounds of disgust. But Elder Vexthera remained unmoved. "While these images are disturbing," she said, "the Council must follow proper procedures. Cannot simply declare war on the hegemony without extensive debate and planning." Jake felt his last bit of patience snap. How extensive? How much debate? Do you need while human children are being turned into weapons? We have been asking for help for 3 years. 3 years of meetings and committees and discussions while our people die. A delegate from the Altarian Republic, a tall blue humanoid, spoke up. "Perhaps we could form a study committee to examine the situation more closely." "A study committee?" Jake almost shouted. "We don't need to study genocide. We need to stop it." Elder Vexthera's mandibles clicked in what might have been irritation. "Captain Morrison, you must understand that the Council has maintained peace in this galaxy for millennia. We do not rush into military action. The consequences could be catastrophic." "The consequences are already catastrophic," Lisa said. "Us. But I suppose human lives don't count for as much as maintaining your precious stability." The chamber erupted in noise as aliens argued among themselves. Some supported immediate action. Others demanded more investigation. Most just wanted the problem to go away so they could return to their comfortable lives. Jake stood in the center of it all, watching the chaos, and realized something important. The council would never help humanity. Not really. It would debate and study and form committees until every human in the galaxy was dead. And then they would debate some more about how it could have been prevented. Elder Vexthera finally restored order. The council will take this matter under advisement. We'll form a special investigative committee to look into these allegations. Captain Morrison, Dr. Harper, we thank you for bringing this to our attention. That's it? Jake asked. Form another committee? While more colonies are attacked? The council operates on consensus, Captain. Cannot act without agreement from all member species. Jake looked around the chamber one more time. At the aliens who had spent centuries hiding behind rules and procedures, at the creatures who valued their own comfort more than justice, at the beings who would let entire species die rather than risk a fight. Then we're done here, he said. He turned and walked toward the door. Lisa followed him. As they reached the exit, Elder Vexthera called out, Captain Morrison, where are you going? The session is not over. Jake stopped and looked back. Yes, it is. For humanity, it's very much over. 3 days later, President Amanda Wells stood behind the podium. In the Oval Office, the flags of Earth and the United Nations hung behind her. Through the windows, she could see the blue sky that humans had looked up at for thousands of years, dreaming of the stars. The cameras were rolling. Every news network on Earth was broadcasting live. But more importantly, the message was being transmitted to every human colony in the galaxy and to the council chambers where the aliens still debated. My fellow humans, President Wells began, for 50 years, we have been members of the Galactic Council, believing that together, all species could work toward peace and prosperity among the stars. She paused, letting her words sink in. We were wrong. The Council has proven time and again that they care more about maintaining their own power than protecting innocent lives. While they debate and form committees, our people suffer and die. Voice grew stronger, more determined. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will no longer seek their permission to defend our people. We will no longer wait for their approval to explore the galaxy. We will no longer be bound by rules that protect everyone except us. The room was silent except for the sound of cameras clicking to our colonies throughout the galaxy. Help is coming. To our enemies, be warned. To the Council we say goodbye. The age of human patience is over. From this day forward, we forge our own path among the stars. As President Wells finished speaking, something changed in the galaxy. Humanity had just declared its independence from the greatest power in known space. And everyone, human and alien alike, wondered what would happen next. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The galaxy was starting to notice changes, big changes. Humans were no longer asking for permission to do anything. They were just doing it. Commander Rick Bradley stood on the bridge of the USS Liberator, watching the stars streak past through the view screen. His ship was nothing like the vessels humans had built under Council rules. The Council had always said human ideas were too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Now, Rick was about to show them exactly why they had been afraid. Sir, we're approaching the Kepler 442 system, reported Lieutenant Ben Carter from his position at the weapons console. Ben was young, maybe 25, but he had lost his brother in the massacre at New Haven Colony. Like every human on the ship, he had personal reasons for being here. Any sign of hegemony forces? Rick asked. Long-range sensors show a patrol fleet near the fourth planet. Looks like they're setting up a mining operation on the moon where New Haven used to be. Rick felt his jaw tighten. The hegemony was literally building on the graves of human children. How many ships? 12 heavy cruisers, maybe 30 smaller? Vessels. Standard hegemony formation. Engineer Maya Rodriguez looked up from her console. She had designed most of the Liberator's systems after the Council stopped restricting human research. Sir, they're using old scanning technology. They can't even see us yet. The Liberator was invisible to hegemony sensors. Maya had figured out how to bend light around the ship using gravity fields. The Council had banned such research. claiming it was too dangerous for young species to develop.
Ow.
What they really meant? Was it made them nervous? "Take us in closer," Rick ordered. "I want to get a good look at what they're doing down there." As they approached the system, the crew could see the hegemony operation clearly. The insects had built a massive facility on the moon's surface. Conveyor belts carried chunks of processed material to waiting transport ships. But Rick knew those weren't just mining materials. The hegemony was literally grinding up the remains of New Haven Colony and turning it into industrial components. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony fleet," Ben reported. "Put it on screen." The image of a hegemony commander appeared. It looked like a giant praying mantis crossed with a cockroach. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke in the harsh, grating language of its species. The ship's computer translated its words. "Unknown vessel, you are entering restricted hegemony space. Identify yourself immediately, or be destroyed." Rick smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Open a channel." The screen now showed Rick's face to the alien commander. The hegemony officer's compound eyes widened slightly. It had clearly not expected to see a human. "This is Commander Rick Bradley of the Human Independent Fleet. You are occupying territory that belongs to humanity. You have exactly 1 minute to withdraw all forces from this system." The hegemony commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "Foolish mammal, you are alone and outnumbered. We have 42 ships to your 1. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." 50 seconds, Rick replied calmly. "Cannot be serious. Your kind hides behind the Council's protection. If no real weapons, no military experience. Have conquered hundreds of species, 40 seconds. The alien's mandibles clicked frantically. "This is insanity. Even if you had weapons, which you do not, you cannot fight an entire fleet." 30 seconds. Rick turned to Maya. "Are the new weapon systems ready?" "All systems green, sir. The Singularity torpedoes are armed and ready." "Singularity torpedoes?" Ben asked. He was new to the ship and hadn't seen the weapons tested yet. "Artificial black holes," Maya explained cheerfully. "Each one about the size of a marble, but with the gravitational pull of a small moon. The Council said such weapons were impossible to create safely." 20 seconds, Rick announced to the hegemony commander. The alien was now clearly panicking. "You are bluffing. No species has such technology." 10 seconds. The hegemony fleet began moving into attack formation. Their weapons powered up, energy readings spiking across human sensors. But they were still using the same technology they had used for centuries. Plasma cannons and particle beams that moved at predictable speeds. "Time's up," Rick said. "Maya, show them what human engineering can do." The Liberator's weapons fired. But instead of the bright energy beams that most species used, the human weapons were almost invisible. Tiny points of absolute darkness shot across space faster than the hegemony ships could react. The first Singularity torpedo hit a hegemony cruiser dead center. The ship simply collapsed in on itself, crushed by artificial gravity into a ball of twisted metal no bigger than a basketball. The second torpedo hit another cruiser with the same result. Within 30 seconds, 6 of the largest hegemony ships had been reduced to tiny spheres of compressed matter. The remaining hegemony vessels panicked. They fired everything they had at the spot where they thought the human ship was located. But the Liberator was no longer there. Using gravity manipulation, Maya had moved the ship instantly to a position behind the enemy fleet. "Sir, there." "Trying to retreat," Ben reported. "No," Rick said firmly. "They made a choice when they decided to grind up human children. Maya, target their engines. I want them stranded here." More Singularity torpedoes fired. Each one was precisely aimed to disable rather than destroy. Within minutes, the entire hegemony fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Rick opened a channel to all the disabled ships. "This is Commander Bradley. Your weapons and engines are destroyed, but your life support is intact. You'll remain here until human rescue ships arrive to collect the survivors from New Haven Colony. If any are still alive, you will turn them over immediately. If they are not, you will answer for their deaths." As if summoned by Rick's words, more human ships began appearing in the system. not the small, careful vessels that humans had built under council oversight, but massive ships bristling with weapons and technology that made alien admirals wake up in cold sweats. Dr. Susan Grant materialized on the Liberator's bridge using the new teleportation technology she had developed. The council had banned such research as impossible and dangerous. Susan had proven them wrong in her basement laboratory on Earth. "Commander Bradley," she said with a slight smile, "I brought a few friends." Through the view screen, Rick could see human ships appearing throughout the system. Not just military vessels, but science ships, colony ships, and massive construction platforms. Within hours, they had begun building a permanent human base in the Kepler 442 system. "Doctor, how many ships did you bring?" Rick asked. "About 200. We're going to turn this place into a fortress. We're going to make sure nothing like New Haven ever happens again." On the planet's surface, human teams were already working. They had found 17 survivors from New Haven, including 8 children hidden in underground shelters. The survivors told horrible stories of what the hegemony had done to their families and friends. But they also told stories of hope, stories of how they had never stopped believing that other humans would come for them, stories of how they had known that Earth would never abandon them, no matter what the Council said. Back on Earth, President Wells was meeting with her military advisors. The success at Kepler 442 was just the beginning. Intelligence reports showed that human colonies throughout the galaxy were under threat. The hegemony was not the only species that had seen humanity's withdrawal from the Council as a sign of weakness. "How many ships can we field?" Wells asked Admiral Kelly Brooks. "At last count, 800 combat-ready vessels, with more coming online every day. Our shipyards are working around the clock, and our new technologies, the artificial intelligence systems, are exceeding all projections. The quantum computers can calculate jump coordinates in seconds instead of hours, and the fusion reactors are producing more energy than we know what to do with." Wells nodded. For 50 years, the Council had limited human development. They had claimed it was for everyone's safety. But now she understood the truth. The Council had been afraid of what humans might accomplish if they were allowed to reach their full potential. "Admiral, I want rescue missions launched to every human colony. If they're in trouble, we help them. If they're under attack, we defend them. And if anyone tries to stop us, we show them what happens when you threaten human children," Brooks finished. Throughout the galaxy, the news of the Kepler 442 rescue spread quickly. Species that had never heard of humans before suddenly found themselves learning about the strange mammals who had just humiliated the mighty hegemony fleet. More importantly, other species that had suffered under hegemony attacks began reaching out to humanity. The Altarians, whose homeworld had been raided just months before. The Centauri Republic, whose trade ships were constantly attacked by hegemony pirates. Dozens of smaller species who had been too afraid to ask the Council for help. They all had the same question. Would humanity help them too? The answer came from President Wells herself, broadcast across the galaxy from the Oval Office. "To all species who seek freedom from oppression, who value the lives of their children above political convenience, who believe that right matters more than might, humanity extends its hand in friendship." 1 year had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The news coming from human space was making the Council members very nervous. Humans were building new ships faster than anyone had ever seen. They were developing weapons that should have been impossible. Worst of all, other species were starting to leave the Council to join the humans. Elder Vexthera stood before the emergency session of the Council. Her compound eyes reflected the worry that filled the chamber. Around her, representatives from dozens of species argued loudly about what to do. "The humans must be brought back under Council authority," declared Admiral Zexmaya of the Tarkelian Empire. He was a tall, blue-skinned humanoid who commanded the largest fleet in Council space. "They are disrupting the natural order of the galaxy." "Natural order?" asked Ambassador Krell of the Altarian Republic. His people had been some of the first to establish trade agreements with humanity. "You mean the order where strong species, like yours, exploit weaker ones, while the Council watches?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some species wanted immediate military action against humanity. Others wanted to negotiate. A few brave delegates suggested that maybe the humans were right about the council being too slow and bureaucratic. Elder Vexthera clicked her mandibles for silence. "The situation is clear," she announced. "Humanity has violated their oath to abide by council law. They have developed forbidden technologies. They have interfered in conflicts that are none of their concern. They must be stopped before they destroy the peace we have maintained for millennia." What the council did not know was that human ships were already watching their every move. Captain Tony Rivera sat in the command chair of the USS Monitor, completely invisible to council sensors. His ship was stationed just outside the council space station, recording every word of their secret emergency session. "Are you getting all this?" Tony asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Kelly Nash. "Every word, sir?" The quantum listening. "Devices are working perfectly." Tony shook his head in amazement. A year ago, humans had been begging these same aliens for help. Now they were planning to attack Earth itself. "Send a priority message to Admiral Brooks. Tell her the council is planning a military response." On Earth, Admiral Kelly Brooks received the warning with grim satisfaction. She had been expecting this. The council could not allow humanity to succeed because it would prove that their entire system was a failure.
"How large a fleet are they?"
"Assembling," she asked her intelligence officer, Commander Steve Parker. "Our scouts report over 1,000 ships from 47 different species. They're calling it a peacekeeping mission." Brooks laughed, but there was no humor in it. Peacekeeping. They're going to attack the Sol system with 1,000 ships and call it peacekeeping. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Brooks turned to look. Out the window of her office, she could see the shipyards in Earth orbit where human workers were building the most advanced vessels in the galaxy. Ships that would have been impossible under council restrictions. Activate the defense grid. Contact all human colonies and tell them to prepare for council attack. And send a message to President Wells. Tell her it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. 3 days later, the massive council fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Zexamiah stood on the bridge of his flagship, a ship so large it could carry 50,000 troops. Behind him stretched a formation of vessels representing the military might of nearly half the galaxy. "Open a channel to Earth," he ordered. President Wells appeared on the screen, sitting calmly behind her desk in the Oval Office. She looked completely unworried, which made Admiral Zexamiah suspicious. "President Wells," he began, "by order of the Galactic Council, humanity is commanded to surrender immediately. You will return to Council authority and submit to judgment for your crimes against galactic peace." Wells smiled slightly. "Crimes? You mean like rescuing human children from being turned into weapons? Or helping other species defend themselves from pirates and raiders? You have developed forbidden technologies. You have interfered in matters beyond your authority. You have disrupted the stability of the galaxy." "What we've done," Wells replied, "is show the galaxy that the Council's way isn't the only way. And judging by how many species have left to join us, I'd say they agree." Admiral Zexamiah's blue skin flushed darker with anger. "You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will take Earth by force." I'm afraid that won't be possible," Wells said politely. "You cannot resist. We have 1,000 ships to your few hundred. Even with your new technologies, you are outnumbered." Wells' smile grew wider. "Admiral, I think you should check your sensors again." Confused, Admiral Zex_Maya turned to his sensor operator. "Report." "Sir, I'm showing the human fleet directly ahead of us. Maybe 300 ships. That's what I thought." "President Wells, you are clearly outnumbered. Check your long-range sensors," Wells suggested gently. The sensor operator worked frantically at his console. Slowly, his face went pale. "Sir, I'm detecting ... This can't be right." "What is it?" the Admiral demanded. "We're surrounded. I'm reading human ships on all sides. Thousands of them." Admiral Zex_Maya stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Council fleet, which had seemed so mighty just moments before, was now shown as a tiny cluster in the center of a vast formation of human vessels. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Where did they all come from?" On Earth, Dr. Helen Carter was explaining the situation to President Wells and her staff. The cloaking technology allows entire fleets to remain completely invisible until we choose to reveal them. The Council fleet has been surrounded since the moment they entered the system. How many ships do we actually have? Wells asked. In this system? About 5,000, spread throughout human space. Over 20,000 and growing every day. Wells nodded. It was time to make the Council understand the new reality. Admiral Zex_Maya, she said, reopening the communication channel. Came here with 1,000 ships, thinking you could intimidate us. But you've made a fundamental error. You're still thinking like the old Council, where bigger fleets meant automatic victory. It will not be intimidated by threats, the Admiral replied, though his voice shook slightly. No threats, Wells said calmly. Just a demonstration, Dr. Carter? Space around Earth began to shimmer. The Council fleet found itself trapped inside a glowing sphere that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction.
Hey, what is this?
Admiral Zex_Maya demanded. Dr. Carter answered from her laboratory on the moon. Controlled space-time. Distortion field. Your ships are now contained within a pocket of altered reality. You cannot leave. You cannot call for help. You cannot even move without our permission. The Council fleet tried desperately to escape. Their most powerful engines could not push them through the barrier. Their most advanced weapons simply absorbed harmlessly into the energy field. This level of technology should be impossible, the Admiral said, his voice barely a whisper. The Council spent so much time telling everyone what was impossible that you never bothered to discover what was possible, Wells replied. We've learned to harness the energy of entire stars. Your fleet is now contained within a space smaller than a planet, but with the gravitational control of a solar system. For the first time in the galaxy's recorded history, a Council fleet was completely helpless. The most powerful military force in known space had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. What do you want? Admiral Zex_Maya asked finally. Recognition, Wells said simply. Recognition that humanity has the right to exist as an independent species. Recognition that we have the right to defend ourselves and our allies. Recognition that the Council's authority ends where human space begins. The negotiations took 3 days. In the end, the Council agreed to establish formal borders between their territory and human space. They agreed to recognize humanity as an independent power. Most importantly, they agreed that any species could choose to leave the Council and join the human alliance without interference. When the Council fleet was finally released and allowed to return home, half the ships stayed behind. Their crews requested permission to join the human alliance rather than return to the Council's bureaucratic paralysis. Among them was Captain Lisa Martinez of the Altarian Republic. She stood on the bridge of her ship as it took its place in the human formation. Why? Admiral Brooks asked her during their first meeting. Why leave everything you've known to join us? Martinez smiled. Because in 1 year you've accomplished more than the Council has in 1,000 years. You've shown us that there's a better way to live among the stars. As the weeks passed, more species left the Council to join humanity. The Proxima Collective brought their advanced medical technology. The Centauri Republic contributed their knowledge of hyperspace navigation. The Kepler Federation shared their expertise in terraforming. Each new member made the human alliance stronger and more diverse.
Oh?
But more importantly, each new member proved that the Council's grip on the galaxy was slipping. On Earth. President Wells met with her expanded cabinet to discuss the future. Representatives from dozens of species now worked together in the halls of human government. 5 years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council. The galaxy looked very different now. Where once there had been one large council controlling hundreds of species, now there were dozens of smaller alliances working together. The Human Alliance had become the largest and most powerful of these groups. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the USS Frontier, the most advanced exploration ship ever built. Her mission was simple but important: explore the space beyond the galaxy and see what else was out there. The Council had always forbidden such exploration, claiming it was too dangerous. Captain, we're detecting something unusual, reported Commander Steve Parker from his science station. He was staring at his instruments with a worried expression. Defined unusual, Lisa said, walking over to look at his readings. Massive energy. Signatures coming from the direction of the Andromeda galaxy. The computer's having trouble analyzing them because they're unlike anything in our databases. Lisa studied the data. The energy readings were enormous, far beyond anything any known species could produce. Could it be natural phenomena? Maybe some kind of cosmic event? No, ma'am. The patterns are too regular, too organized. This is definitely artificial. And Captain, there's something else. What, they're moving? Toward us? Toward our galaxy? Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Get me a priority channel to Earth Command. Quantum encryption. Within minutes, she was speaking directly to Admiral Kelly Brooks on Earth. The Admiral listened carefully as Lisa reported her findings. How long until they reach our galaxy? Brooks asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 months? The energy signatures suggest a fleet of incredible size. We're talking about millions of ships, each one larger than anything we've ever built. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Captain, I'm sending you additional orders. Map their approach vector and try to learn everything you can about these newcomers. But stay hidden. Do not, under any circumstances, let them detect your presence. Understood, Admiral. As the weeks passed, human scout ships gathered more information about the approaching fleet. What they learned was terrifying. The ships belonged to a species that called itself the Devourers. They had already consumed 3 entire galaxies, stripping them of all life and resources to fuel their endless expansion. The Devourers were not like any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They did not conquer worlds to rule them. They did not take prisoners to enslave them. They simply consumed everything in their path, turning entire civilizations into raw materials for their war machine. President Amanda Wells called an emergency meeting of the Human Alliance. Representatives from over 60 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on Earth. The mood was grim as Wells explained the situation. The approaching fleet represents an extinctionally level threat to every living being in our galaxy, she said. The Devourers have destroyed billions of civilizations. They show no mercy, accept no surrender, and leave nothing alive behind them. Ambassador Krell of the Altarian Republic raised his hand. What about the Council? Surely this threat is large enough to put aside our differences? Wells nodded. I've already contacted Elder Vexera. The Council is in complete panic. They're begging us to help them. A bitter laugh came from several delegates. For years, the Council had treated the Human Alliance as rebels and troublemakers. Now they wanted help. What did you tell them? Asked Captain Martinez, who had returned from her scouting mission. I told them the truth. This threat is too big for any one group to handle alone. If we're going to survive, every species in the galaxy needs to work together. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity had left the Council because of their refusal to act decisively. Now faced with the greatest threat in galactic history, the humans were the ones offering to unite everyone. Dr. Susan Grant stood up from her seat. As humanity's chief scientist, she had been working on potential defenses against the Devourers. I have a proposal. Our research has shown that the Devourers' ships are vulnerable to coordinated energy pulses on a galactic scale. If we can synchronize the energy output of every inhabited world in the galaxy, we might be able to create a barrier they cannot penetrate. That would require unprecedented cooperation, observed Ambassador Chen of the Proxima Collective. Every species would need to work together perfectly. Yes, Wells agreed, which is why we're going to share everything. Every piece of technology we've developed since leaving the Council, every scientific breakthrough, every military innovation. We're going to give it all away freely. The chamber fell silent. The technologies humanity had developed were worth more than entire star systems. They represented decades of research and innovation, and Wells was proposing to simply give them away. Why? Asked Elder Urith of the Kepler Federation. Why would you share such valuable knowledge? Wells' answer was simple. Because dead species don't need technology. Because children of every race deserve a future. Because sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. Within days, human ships were arriving at every major world in the galaxy. They carried not weapons or demands, but gifts. scientists, engineers, and teachers who freely shared humanity's greatest discoveries with anyone who would listen. Dr. Grant worked with teams of alien researchers, teaching them how to build the energy synchronization devices. The quantum resonance field needs to be precisely calibrated, she explained to a mixed group of scientists. Even a small error could cause the entire system to collapse. The work was incredible in its scope. Thousands of worlds needed to be connected by a network of quantum communications. Millions of energy generators had to be built and synchronized. The entire galaxy needed to work together. It's like a single organism. But the most amazing thing was how willingly everyone cooperated. Species that had been enemies for centuries worked side by side. The Council's bureaucratic procedures were abandoned in favor of quick decisions and immediate action. Old grudges were forgotten in the face of universal extinction. Captain Tony Rivera commanded one of the construction fleets building the Galactic Defense Network. His ships worked alongside vessels from dozens of different species, all following human engineering plans. Sir, the Tarkelian fleet is requesting permission to modify their section of the network, reported his communications officer. Granted. Any improvement suggestions should be shared with all construction teams immediately. It was a new way of thinking. Instead of hoarding knowledge and protecting secrets, everyone shared everything. The defense network grew stronger. As each species contributed their unique abilities and perspectives, as the Devourers drew closer, the galaxy prepared for the greatest battle in its history. But this would not be a battle of ships and weapons. It would be a test of whether dozens of different species could truly work as one. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace at the galaxy's edge, a dark wall of ships that stretched across entire star systems. They moved with mechanical precision toward the galactic core, ready to begin their harvest. But they found something they had never encountered before. As they approached the first inhabited worlds, they hit an invisible barrier that stopped them completely. The synchronized energy output of billions of worlds created a field that even their massive fleet could not penetrate. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers found themselves facing something they could not simply consume. The galaxy had become a unified fortress, protected by the combined will of every species within it. The alien invaders tried everything. They brought forward their largest ships, weapons that could crack planets in half. They attempted to overload the barrier with pure force. They searched for weak points in the Galactic Defense Network. Nothing worked. Every attack was absorbed and redirected. Every attempt to break through was met with increased resistance. The galaxy had become something the Devourers had never encountered. A prey species that was stronger together than any predator could overcome. After 3 days of futile attacks, the Devourer fleet began to withdraw. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they had met something they could not defeat. They turned away from the Milky Way and headed toward distant galaxies where the prey would hopefully be easier as the threat passed. Celebrations erupted on worlds throughout the galaxy. But the real celebration was not about defeating an enemy. It was about discovering what they could accomplish when they worked together. President Wells stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly, no longer dominated by the old council but representing every species equally. Behind her, the flags of dozens of worlds flew side by side. "We have learned something important," she said. "We learned that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. We learned that cooperation works better than domination. We learned that sometimes the greatest victories come not from conquest, but from protection." The galaxy that emerged from the Devourer crisis was fundamentally different from what had come before. The old council's rigid hierarchy was replaced by flexible alliances. Species worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Knowledge was shared freely instead of hoarded jealously.